Hey, welcome to this edition of our Life Minutes videos from Oakridge Community Church. We are continuing our look at Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And today we're going to talk about what does Jesus say about being a promise keeper. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 33, Jesus said this, "Again you have heard that it was said of those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn." He went on to talk about oaths and vows and talking about being people of our word. And I want to just spend a few moments talking about these 5 verses found in Matthew chapter 5. First, I do want to say what Jesus is not telling us. He's not saying that it's wrong to make a vow. He's not saying it's wrong to take an oath. He's not forbidding those things. The problem was with the people of his day, especially the religious leaders. You see, they had come up with an elaborate system of making vows and promises and having ways to get out of keeping their word. Usually, if you made a vow or took an oath, you would have somebody there to witness it. That way, it could be established that what was said was truthful and what was said was accurate. But the religious leaders of Jesus' day approached it a little different. Instead of making a promise or a vow and then saying, well, my friend here will be a witness to this, they would really, in some ways, do ridiculous things. They would make a vow and then say, I am making this vow, and the city of Jerusalem is my witness to this vow. Now, to you and I, that sounds silly. It's no different than me looking at this coffee cup and saying, I make a promise to you, and the coffee cup is my witness. And they had come up with this odd, elaborate system, and that way, if they wanted to break their word or not keep a vow, well, who could hold them to it? The city of Jerusalem as itself couldn't do it. They would also say, I make a vow and the earth is my witness. Well, Jesus saw this as just flat out ridiculous. And so when he talked about making oaths and promises and vows, he reminded these religious leaders that if you're going to go to these type of extremes to get out of keeping your word, I have an answer for you. He reminded them that the city of Jerusalem was the city of the great King, Jesus, and that the earth was actually God's footstool. His point, God is sovereign, God knows what you said, God heard your word, and he expects you to keep it. So he was not going to let them get away with their little shenanigans that they would try so that they wouldn't have to keep any promises if they chose not to. But what does Jesus then teach us in this passage in Matthew 5? Well, let me just share with you 3 things. The first thing is this: if you're a follower of Jesus, we should not have to make a vow. Again, remember what he said, vows are not wrong and oaths are not wrong. But as a Christian, I shouldn't have to be made to take a vow. I shouldn't have to be made to take an oath. I just need to be a person of integrity, a person who tells the truth and speaks the truth. The second thing Jesus said was to guard ourselves from questionable motives when we make promises to someone. That was his whole point when he challenged the silliness of the religious leaders and the way they tried to get out of keeping vows. In other words, don't give our word if we have no intention of keeping it. And if we're going to try to get out of a promise, it's better not to have made one in the first place. One author noted that when the Pharisees took an oath, because of their way of trying to wiggle out of it, here's what he said, quote, they had mental reservations about what they were affirming. So in other words, that's why they came up with their elaborate system. They might promise to do something by coming up with a silly witness to their vow. They chose not to do it. They didn't have to. So don't give somebody our word if we're not going to do our best to keep it. The third thing is this: Jesus says in verse 37, let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. In other words, let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you can't do something, say no. And if you say yes, then fulfill our words. Fulfill what we say. Think before we speak. Remember, if we're a Christian, we are to be salt and light, meaning a positive influence in the world. And also keep in mind how much damage we might cause by being people who can't be trusted in what we say. This is Scott from Oakridge Community Church. Thanks for checking in.